The best way to slow down your slow motion footage is to select all of those clips. You can see here I've got some 120 FPS clips. That's 5 times slow-mo. If I play it back at 24 frames per second, right click, go to modify, go to interpret footage, and then tell it to assume this frame rate, and you type in the frame rate you want. In this case, I'm going to make it 24. The listed frame rate went from 120 to 24. Now you can see it's basically made the clip 5 times longer, and it's playing it back 5 times slower. Your second option for slowing down footage is done within the timeline. So if I drag this 120 FPS clip into my 24 frames per second sequence, right click on the clip itself, click on speed and duration, and put in whatever percentage you want it to be. So here I'll put 20%, and it's playing back at 1/5 speed. The third method involves this slider that you can see here. By default, this slider on clips within your timeline will control opacity. As you can see, it's adjusting the opacity of my clip. But if I right click a specific clip within the timeline, go to show clip keyframes, time remapping, and speed, this slider now controls speed. You can see that by default it's on 100%, obviously, but if I pull the whole thing down to 20%, we now have 5 times slow motion. I could also pull it up to 500% if I wanted to, and that'd make the whole clip 5 times faster. This third method is particularly useful if you'd like to keyframe the speed of a specific clip in your timeline. You control click on the slider and you can drag up one part, and you can see it's 20% here, and then it speeds up there. And you can pull this out so that the speed ramps up over a duration of time, and you can fiddle with this to smooth out the ramp itself. And that's basically how you do a speed ramp. Without going into detail, it's a editing technique you can use to do stylistic stuff within your edits. So that's literally how to slow down your footage, and I won't go into much more detail beyond that, except to reiterate the best way to slow down your footage is the first method, where you modify every clip within your bin to the desired FPS. And the second and third method are good to play around with the speed of specific clips within your timeline. I will also note, I've assumed that you kind of know what you're doing in terms of frames per second if you're watching this video, but for those of you who are confused, you do need to shoot in slow motion in the first place in order to be able to slow down clips and for them to look good played back in slow motion. The way slow-mo clips work is that they are shot in the first place, capturing extra frames per second so that you can spread those frames out over multiple seconds and play 1 second worth of real time back over, say, 5 seconds, like the example within this video. The reason that's possible is because you've captured 5 times as many frames within that 1 second as you usually would. If you haven't shot in slow-mo and you've shot, for example, in 24 frames per second, which is a standard frame rate for normal speed footage, and then you try and slow down that footage to 5 times slow-mo, you only have 24 frames to work with within that 1 second of footage. So if you slow it down 5 times, it's going to be playing in basically 5 frames per second, and it doesn't look good at all. I'll quickly show you an example so you know what I mean. So I've dragged in a clip that is 24 frames per second, and I'll show you what happens if we try and slow it down. Speed, 20%, so it's 5 times slow-mo. It does play back slower, but as you can see, it's very choppy. That's because there aren't enough frames available for it to slow down smoothly, unlike this footage of my bird, where there's plenty of frames available because it was shot in 120 FPS. If this was helpful, hit like, subscribe, hit the little bell. There's going to be more no-nonsense tutorials on the way. But thank you so much for watching, and see you next time.